All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond, Season 3, Episode 15. This is episode 102 altogether. We out here chopping it away. If you have made it this far, if you've made it this far, and you look, let me step back because I'm getting ahead of myself. Thank you guys so much for the support, not just around me, but also around the guests who's been on here, checking out what they're doing, connecting with them, and more so. That's one of the biggest reasons why I created this platform. So not only will I be able to uplift things that are happening around child welfare and the other connecting areas, but also be able to help other individuals that need that support or in this space. So thank you guys for that. I truly could not be here and doing what I'm doing without you guys. Now, if you've made it to season 3 and you just like, who is this person talking? That's okay. That's all right. My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent approximately 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. I started advocating at 15 while I was in residential and have been working professionally within the child welfare space within another 11 years. So I have 11 years of lived experience and 11 years of professional experience within this space. So that's what leads me here today to be hosting, to be talking to you guys and sharing my knowledge and talking to guests and them sharing their knowledge and their stories to hopefully touch somebody out there, so help someone out there, or give somebody some insight. With that being said, y'all not here for me. As much as I would like to talk, yeah, that's I will have my guest introduce herself.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Tika Jeffery. Um, how much details do you want me to provide?
Well, the next question goes deep. So whatever level that you want to.
Okay, so my name is Tika Jeffery. I am the Youth Development Specialist / Speak Out Liaison for the state of Virginia. I have my own personal lived experience as well. I was in care at the age of 13, aged out at 21, legally adopted at 22, was a legal kinship giver of my sister at 26. So not only do I have the lived experience, but I also have the professional experience. And now I'm a mom of 3 and a wife.
Wow. You dropped a few gems, plus there, and my first question is gonna take us a little bit deeper, if you don't mind. And my first question kind of asks to whatever ability that you're comfortable, um, share a bit of that timeline to your now.
So when you say to my now, so entering foster care all the way up to the present day.
Yeah, let's shoot there.
Okay, let's see. Um, I entered foster care, like I said, around the age of 13. I got into a really bad bus fight that ended 3 buses crashing into mine, full of youth. Of course, that led to me being expelled, which an investigation went on, and some things came out that was going on at home, and then I entered foster care. So that was around age 13, 14 years old. Um, Traveled to different homes while in care for what the 8, 9 years I was in there. But the true thing, the best thing about being in care was I was given an opportunity to go back to school, public schools. So although I was kicked out of one of the major counties in Virginia, I was able to kind of get my foot back in the door by entering foster care. Um, and then, of course, like I said, I moved around quite a bit. Eventually, one of my foster parents retired when I was 16. I lived on my own, struggled. If anybody knows what it feels like to be in independent living and receiving a little monthly stipend and trying to go to school full time and work full time and try to provide shelter for yourself, it's truly difficult. So I did that for quite some time. Not to keep repeating that word, but did
Mhm.
that for a bit until I was about 2021. Then I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like the struggle. This is the worst." So let me find out some support. Let me see who I can reach out to kind of help me get ahead instead of constantly being behind. So I reached out to my best friend's family and I said, "Hey, I'm going to continue to make some bad decisions. Times are really hard, and I really just want to get ahead in life. Can I come and stay with you for a little bit?" They talked it over for a little bit, and then they got back to me and they said, "Sure." I was like, "Yes, this is awesome. Finally get to get ahead in life and not feel like the burden of society on my shoulders." So I moved in with them, and I want to say within a year, they presented adoption to me. And I was like, "Adoption? Why would you want to adopt me? Do you not hear the history I have? The labels, getting kicked out of school. Mind you, they lived in the county that I got kicked out of.
Mhm.
And the school is actually right down the street. It's like, do you really want to take on this responsibility?" And they're like, "Yeah, want to give you an opportunity, give you support, guidance, everything you didn't have." So I thought about it, and I finally agreed to it. I was like, "Sure, let's go ahead. Let's commit. We're all in it." So, it took some time, but maybe about a year it took for all the paperwork and everything to go through, and they legally adopted me. Once they legally adopted me, life completely changed for me. I had stability, I had parents, I had guidance, I had love, um, and it provided a foundation for me to be the mother that I am today. So even though I wasn't adopted as an infant or a toddler, they still instilled some things in me that allowed me to be the best mother and version of a woman I am today. So fast forwarding a little bit, like I said, I'm a mother of three, and I married my high school sweetheart, so to speak. And it's a huge foundation to who I am, and part of the reason why I kind of advocate the way that I advocate through a perspective of needing support at all ages and guidance and mentors, because you never know at what time frame a youth may actually listen or need your support or guidance. They always need it, but that one particular person with that experience, that lived experience, and that motherhood um, background may be needed in a way that they're not aware of. And so I like to provide insight and guidance on the importance of family and permanency.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, I want to dive a little bit deeper, but you mentioned some of the hats that you wear now.
Mhm,
And I want to kind of lay the land for individuals listening to get to know you a little bit more, um, and it may be helpful for them. You One of the hats is that you're a wife.
mhm,
Another hat is that you're a mother. The other hat is that you have a family now. So not you know not having that family at a period of time, in a sense that probably provided some structure, and correct me if I'm wrong. um what did that mean to you? Because I know you said yes, but was there a transition period to recognizing, like, oh no, I'm a part of a family now, like, they got my back?
mhm.
And what did that look like for you, as you navigated that transition? But also the other component to the that question is, as a mother, um, did you ever have a moment when you were like, I have an opportunity here? Um, and similar to that, as a wife, you know, what did that role look like for you?
Okay, for me, there was an adjustment period. Even though my best friend's family adopted me, you still have in the back of your mind, if my family can leave me or left me, then what prevents them from leaving me?
Mm,
And so for me, that for one, that's a really corrupt way of thinking. It's not the best mindset to be in.
mhm,
It just creates a lot of emotional negativity, and it doesn't set you up for success or welcoming the abundance of love and support that they're willing to provide. With that being said, I knew the family before I entered foster care. They actually knew my biological father. They knew me and my experience and what I had went through before I even asked for them to open the doors to me. So that was one thing. And again, I entered foster care at 13 years old. It wasn't until I was about 20 years old that I asked them to move in. So during those years, we were actually building a relationship. Like, I call them, they'll answer. They never showed me any aggression. They never belittled me. They never showed nothing but love to me. So when I came to a point where I needed that support, I felt comfortable enough to ask them for additional support, opening their doors for me. And it's because we had already built that relationship and that history was already there. But also being in that home, my parents don't yell. That was completely different for me. Um, they cooked all the time or provided food options. We had one-on-one conversations. My mom had single conversations with me about God and, the right way to love and how to be supportive and things like that. And then my dad was more so of a dad figure. We watched sports together. Even though I'm a female, we watched some MMA because I did taekwondo. So I enjoyed that. And then we would have business conversations, just things that I should be looking forward to in business, as well as, characteristics of a man. Like a man never hits a woman. Like, why do you yell? Like a man should provide. And these are the type of conversations that we had that kind of helped me and my high school sweetheart kind of find pieces together, in a sense. Um, and then kind of switching over to motherhood, my mom always told me that, patience is kindness, patience is love, patience is just one of those things that you need in order to, I guess, in a sense, be the best version of yourself. And I did not understand that for the longest time. And I was like, Mom, I don't understand what patience have to do with any of this stuff. And she said, when you're patient, um, you kind of removing expectations and kind of just meeting them where they're at and kind of just extending a helping hand. And so when she explained it to me a little bit more into details, I was like, okay, I can understand that. I can definitely get where you're going. But it took literally some years. I finally was like, what do you mean patience, Mom? Like, what are you talking about? And when she explained it, it definitely clicked. And so I try to practice a lot of patience. Um, Being a mother of three or two now, one on the way, it's not very easy, but my mom's words are always in my head. And so it definitely allows me to be a little bit more calmer and make wiser decisions, as well as using my past experience of not having my parents in my life. I use that as the foundation. So I take everything my biological parents didn't do or didn't have, and I use it as a foundation to kind of provide for my kids. So if they weren't present for me and I see how it affects me, please believe that I'm always in my kids' life present, anything they do, an award, first bike ride, anything. I want to be present to experience it all because I see how it affected me growing up not having them in the picture.
Wow. I definitely I definitely can relate to that. In many ways, I you touched on the importance of conversation. And I think that's so important to highlight because there may be some foster parents, some adoptive parents, maybe some bio parents who are reunified that may be listening to this. And I realize we are in a day and age where a lot of people don't have that village. I realize that there are a high percentage of young parents that don't have the tools, to be quote unquote as good as they would like to be. And there's many other life circumstances, but one of the things that you pointed out is the importance of those small, what you would think not so meaningful conversations being truly impactful. Those moments sitting down with your adoptive dad and watching sports, and I'm pretty sure y'all had random conversation in the midst of watching sports, and him talking to you, about what to look for, what are things that a man should do for you, and all these different things. But also I'm pretty sure you had conversations with your adoptive mom, you know um and i think I think about how many individuals that don't get those conversations and that are out there kind of like winging it.
Mhm.
And that was me, that was me winging it, trying to watch, and I've talked about this before, trying to watch like TV sitcoms like Martin, Fresh Prince, and trying to figure out what it meant to be like a gentleman, what it meant to be a man. Um, and I like to think now I figure it out to a certain degree. There's probably some things that I still got to work on. And I remember, I don't know if someone told me this or I encountered it in life, that someone told me that you earn your manhood through how you walk in life, and how you carry yourself. And I'm pretty sure that's the same for you know your womanhood, in the essence, like being a man or being a lady, I guess. And I know there's other, as we speak, there's other sectors, but forgive me for not knowing the proper terms. um but in essence, as I was growing up, I wanted to figure out what that would be like, what that meant, because it got tossed around a lot.
Mhm.
And without having that structure and not having those conversations, I was in the space of, okay, you got to figure it out. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that there's a significant amount of people that have been out here winging it. And to a level, as you share a bit of your story, you were winging it, and then you found some source, within your adulthood, that help you out.
Mhm.
And that's many people reality, they find a friend or find a mentor,
Yep.
someone within their church or someone within their job. And next thing you know, it's a mentorship, someone and swept them under their wing or what have you, and I can't help but to think, don't know the stats, how many individuals and how many conversations, with individuals that aren't being had, that leads to certain outcomes or certain things that could possibly be prevented, and what we see within the
Mhm.
individuals who age out, or be adopted, or so forth.
You know,
So yeah.
it's crazy that you say that because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm over the Virginia Youth Advisory Board called Speak Out.
Mhm.
And it's a collaboration of youth that's been adopted, kinship, foster care, transitioned out. And there's one particular youth that I've been mentoring since she was about 16, 17 years old, and she was preparing to transition out of care. Um, and she was like, okay, I'm going to go find an apartment. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to kind of stand on my 2 feet and be able to live on my own. And I was like, that sounds great, but I don't know if you've really thought about everything that comes with living on your own. Have you thought about transportation? Have you thought about food? Have you thought about, being a woman, being followed home, how to defend yourself, how to protect yourself? These are all things that you have to account for. It's not just about, you getting your space and being able to afford it.
Mhm.
There's a great deal of responsibility that comes with that as well. And so I was like, how about you consider, you know, a previous foster family or friend or family member that you can trust and move in with them and save before you transition into, adulthood or being independent. And she was like, I don't know. I've been on my own for so long and I just like my space and privacy. And I was like, I completely understand that. I did too until I'm getting chased home at 8 o'clock at night from work, multiple times until somebody figured out my routine because I get on a bus schedule and they trying to pick me up at the bus stop. I said, these are things you really have to consider. Sex trafficking is a big thing. And these people knew my schedule by clockwork. And so consider living with someone else in order to get on your feet the way you want to. Long story short, she ended up moving in with one of her previous families, and it provided her great comfort. She was like, it was so unusual to wake up and come downstairs and they say good morning. It was so unusual for them to be, cooking dinner and ate together. Like these things were so out of her norm that it was almost uncomfortable for her.
Mhm.
However, she appreciated the conversation we had to show her the other side of what it was to live independently. And now she looks back and she's like, that was like the best decision of my life. She's like, I kind of gained some stability, my communication's better. She was worried because she felt like nobody cared for her, prior to her living in that house. She's like, it's crazy that they actually care for me and didn't have any expectations, just want the best for me. And I was like, it's amazing what happens when you just kind of live outside of your norm and just take advice. Now here we are, many years later, the vice president of my board, and she's doing very well, very happy. And it just small conversations like that, just to point another like a point of view and showing them like I've been there, it helped. It it really helped and made a big difference.
You know, I really glad that you shared that story and her journey with us. Because yeah, no, I think back to myself and some individuals I've mentored. Um, unfortunately, because of what you go through, you build up this lens of reality, and it takes conversations like that for you to be like, oh, my way. Sometimes, really, my way of thinking may not be real reality. You know, or in the sense of normalcy, and then when you get into these different spaces where it's okay to not be okay.
Mhm.
um it's okay, to hear someone say they love you, and all these different things that are normal things and patterns of relationships with people and activities and support. um that was another thing I figured out as an adult, because I went so many years institutionalized in institutions, and you know, being my own support. Normalcy, like
What
some
is
of the
that?
just random small things were like, all right, I'm
Mhm.
good, bro. And still to today, as a 26-year-old, I still have those moments. I have a um, and this is gonna be TMI. Some people probably go, I have a extremely hard time um taking compliments from others. And I had someone ask me, like, is it an insecurity thing? I was like, no, I really feel confident about myself. Like, Michael is the ish. Like, you know, uh, I really love myself and what have you. It's just when someone else says, like, Michael, like, your podcast is really great. You're doing, really good things, or you're out, it don't like it's like it don't really come in that good.
Yeah.
It's like there's a instinct for me to want to be like, okay, appreciate it. All right, I'm good. You can
Mm-hmm.
stop now. And that's just like one of the other, small quirks, that, I know some other people who don't even go through the child welfare system still have a hard time taking compliments and different things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that I've noticed about myself, in the aspect of you mentioning that. So thank you. You kind of segued us into, your expertise, your advocacy, and the work that you do now. Um, Talk to us a little bit more about the work that you do now, how you got into it, and what does that look like?
Well, how did I get into it? Honestly, I felt like the voices of teens weren't being heard. I was labeled a troubled child or a bad child back in the day because I got into this bus fight, like I mentioned, that ended up crashing three buses full of youth into mine. But no one really took the time to figure out why it happened or what's going on with, back at home, or, what issues are going on that made me start this fight or be part of this fight. You know what I'm saying? Like no one took that time. And so once I was given another opportunity, once I entered foster care, a lot of the outside noise was gone. I didn't have my biological ties to my family, so I didn't have to go home to whatever was corrupted, at home. I was able to kind of gain some type of stability, even though it wasn't my home. It's just home was more peaceful in a sense. Not the best place. I'm not going to say like every foster home I went to was the best experience and things like that, but I didn't have the same problems I was going through at my biological house or my biological home. And so when I was at a point transitioning out of foster care, I entered FAMU and I was there in Florida, and something had dawned on me. They're paying for my college tuition out of state. They're providing me my books. I was in the process of getting adopted, so I had family to call and support me when I needed just a conversation, guidance, whatever the case may be. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, growing up in the system wasn't as bad for me as it is for others. So when I decided to when I finished at FAMU, I moved back and I reached out to my social worker and I asked her, I said, hey, I would like to help teens in foster care and let them know that, foster care is really what you make it, and I would like to provide them a different point of view, some insight from someone that has experience, and, let's see where this goes. So I started as a mentor with the Youth Advocate Program for Fairfax County. And then some opportunities will slowly come in. They're like, hey, Adopt US Kids is looking for a speaker. Are you willing to kind of share your story? Like, my story? I'm just a kid that grew up in care. I was adopted at 22 too. But I have no, like, what story do you want to hear? And they're like, just your story, your experience. Huh. It's like, okay, I'll give it a try. Drove to Baltimore, did maybe like a 5-minute uh, presentation with the local news, and that was that. Then another opportunity came, and then it just kept coming. And so that's how I started in the space. And then I started during COVID, I started doing TikTok.
Mm.
And I really started sharing stories on how, youth and how they're perceived and just sharing their experiences. And so that allowed me to have another way to reach other individuals and people. But needless to say, it's been about 10 years, and I've been advocating specifically for teens in care and permanency because I understand how important it is to have a family or some type of support group. And I definitely understand how it feels to be alone as a teen aging out of foster care. And it's been a great experience. All that work has led me up to be the youth advisory, the liaison for the Virginia Youth Advisory Board. It has led me into rooms and conversations with, Congress, the news, panels, keynote speaking. Um, it just opened the doors for so much. And I just had to be vulnerable, you know. Not everyone's willing to tell their story or comfortable sharing their experience of being in foster care. For me, I'm not so embarrassed. We all have some type of experience that we may not want to share, but I feel like it's all relatable.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's truly meaningful because don't get me wrong, I'm a teen advocate. I I'm a teen advocate. And I've said it on here before. Like, teens get the broad end of the stick in the system. Like, once you hit that, oh, you're a teenager. Oh, well, we gonna hope the best for you.
Yeah,
Here's the first aid kit almost. We gonna send you to the front of the line. Like, I
yeah.
mean, and don't be a teen male. Like, Lord, like, man, that's almost all our hopes is off,
Yeah.
And I know there's, some states, some cities, some counties that have done a little bit better in the aid of supporting teenagers, um, and trying to make sure, that they don't have to age out, or that they can find a home, or they can reunify, but the numbers don't lie. There's more teens that age out of the system, than teens who get reconnected or get adopted or find a home. There's more teens that are put into residentials
Hmm.
because of not being able to find a home, or no one really wanting to foster or adopt teenagers. So this is a PSA announcement.
And
There's a
I've
lot of teens
learned
out there.
yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like, and I'm not gonna say I feel like most individuals or parents that are wanting to foster or adopt feel like they lost that first.
Yeah.
Teens, you don't get that first diaper change, that first um driving experience with some of them. They
Mhm.
feel like they've lost out on those things, those moments. And my parents had a lot of first. Matter of fact, my mom, she was in the room I was giving birth. That was really awkward for me, but but that was a first for me, and I'm pretty sure that was our first experience together. She was teaching me and my husband how to nurse, on my daughter. And so it's like you don't lose out on the first experience just because you didn't get them when they were younger. There's other
Mhm.
things you can be involved in as they get older as well. There's still prom, homecoming, graduation, first job, first breakup, but no one really registers that. Nobody really thinks about that. And I also think there's a stigma that, they don't want to be adopted or they don't want a family. They don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And so I just think that families looking to adopt or foster should could keep these things in consideration. As you say, this is a PSA. Like, keep these
Mhm.
things in mind. Just because you didn't that first tooth grew in or that first boo-boo you weren't there for, there's other firsts you can experience. And teens aren't broken, so to speak. They just have a lot of history behind them that needs to be undone. And it takes one person to care and be that stable, consistent person to pour into them for them to make their life different or to make that change.
Definitely, definitely. And I'd add that, there there is a level to, okay, you get this teenager, you know, this teenager has went X amount of years without love or without someone unconditionally loving them.
Mhm.
So of course it's gonna be probably rough until they see consistency with you, you know. Um, and that's with anybody, but unfortunately, a high percentage of individuals who go into the foster care system for one incident or another, the consistent language that we all grasp, especially those who've been in residential settings or, had certain X amount of experiences, is if I hold out behaviorally, or getting close to you, I get to see how you really feel.
Mhm.
Um, and it's unfortunate that that's something or a tactic that we all seem to develop, but you got to look at why we developed that, you know, and there's a level of consistency that needs to happen for you to be able to allow that person to feel comfortable with you.
Mhm.
Um, I would also add that something we don't talk about is there. I understand it and I get it and I respect it. There's a lot of individuals who get into fostering and adopting because they may not be able to have kids of their own, or there may be different circumstances or situations. You can't put that level of expectation when you want to foster or adopt. That's a whole different, and I strongly, I strongly recommend those families who may be looking, or in this for that specific reason of supplementing for what they may have lost or cannot have, you take time to process, grieve that,
Mhm.
because by you having that expectation, you place that on that, even if you do get it, you place that expectation on that baby, on that young toddler, or that teen.
Mhm.
And it's an unrealistic expectation because you had all these imagination and these visions for a child that you wanted, and what if that child that you get don't amount to those expectations?
Mhm.
So I think, a lot of individuals who are getting licensed or who are already licensed, there's a level of dealing with why you got into this, and giving yourself that room to grieve, giving yourself that room to process so you can be in this to, I like to tell people to go into it being a mentor, being a support,
Mhm.
being a resource broker. And if you build that relationship, if you, and I truly mean if you, because you have to allow that child to give you permission to be considered a mom or a dad. You can't go into it like, oh, you mom and dad, because unfortunately they have um a mom or dad, out there, a
Mhm.
biological. And sometimes those titles, those positions can hold some trauma. And by you trying to assume those positions, you can get some blunt behavior,
Mhm.
because they, you know, that's what they are used to, so go into it, just trying to be a resource, being a mentor and allow that space for that relationship for it to be more of a family, you know, um, partnership to grow.
I agree with you. You know, when I became the legal guardianship of my sister, she was a teenager. So I had a newborn, a 3-year-old, and a 16-year-old. Like, those were a lot of hats that I had to wear, and I was unfamiliar with motherhood, better yet, sisterhood, because I didn't grow up with her. But when she came to my house and I became her legal guardianship, she would say, like, "You're not my mother. Like, stop trying to act like my mother." And I would say, "I'm not trying to be your mother, but I am trying to provide you stability and guidance." And so that's how our conversations would go. And then we came up with a creative name for me because I didn't want to be her mother. Because I mean, I had her at like 12 or, 10, some ridiculous age, which I didn't. And we looked just alike. And so when I go out in public, they're like, "Oh, look at your daughter." No, sir, that's not my daughter. It's my sister. These tiny humans right here next to me, those are my kids. And so we found it as a way to kind of bond, coming up with a name for me, and it was Smother. It's kind of sister mother, because I was her legal guardianship, and it just allowed us to kind of have joking moments, ease up the space a little bit, and it kind of allowed us to connect in a way. So it doesn't even have to be a mother dad or father mother position or role. Find out
Mhm.
what works for them, and allow that to be the foundation to how you guys build your relationship, because not any relationship or every relationship is the same. So I wanted to kind of pivot on that too, because that's how, when I speak to parents in trainings, that's what I talk about. You don't have to have mother, you don't have to have father. You don't know
Mhm.
what type of trauma or triggers that's going to bring the kid, like you were saying, or you. So come up with something different, come up with code names. Nobody else needs to know your business.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. I want to segue as I get ready to like ask my final questions. And this is kind of going to tie your professional and your childhood experience leading to that all together. Um, what level has self care and mental health played a part in your work, in I guess in your upbringing. Uh, and I know, through talking, you mentioned experiencing COVID and being in that space, working within that. So like I know everybody experienced some stuff. COVID. We all was going through it. But everyone has their own unique experience with that. So what has self-care and mental health looked like, what has been the journey, what has been the barriers, and what does it look like now holding those hats that we mentioned before?
My self-care, it's a little different than I would say most people, but that's obvious because everybody's self-care is a little bit different. Although I've been in this space for well over 10 years, I never really fully stepped into that space until maybe this year or last year, because I was working on myself, healing my trauma, trying to be the best version for my kids as well as my spouse, my sister. I wanted to make sure that I lead by example. So I went to therapy, you know? That's where I pretty much figured out some of my triggers. I tried to, unlearn some unhealthy habits. I talked about the needy, greedy details of, why I entered foster care that I never really shared with anyone else. So therapy was one of my biggest thing when it came to, my self-care. I am very active. Well, I was very active. So I mentioned I did Taekwondo before I became pregnant now. I was into weightlifting with all women's gym. So I was in there deadlifting 275. I was in there benching, 185. Like, I was very active. These are all things that I'm doing to kind of take care of myself and to pour into me, because I feel like I lived in trauma survival mode for so long that I needed to figure out ways to kind of undo it. And once I stopped and listen to my body and my needs and getting, my therapy, my help, I was able to realize that I've been in survival mode in all these years. So, and that's what I found out through therapy. Um, I also, when I'm overwhelmed, I very creative, DIYs, arts and crafts. Like this is my self-care for me. Even working with the youth, sometimes it's overwhelming because they have some stories that just consume so much of you emotionally. It's like, okay, I just need to take a minute, step away, and just process what's either been said, what's going on, and crafting's my thing. I can't really work out right now, so that's my best, that's my go-to. But, self-care for me, it all depends on how that day is, what my mood is, and it just adjusts. But therapy was the most consistent thing to undo all that trauma so I didn't pass it on to my kids and, keep that generational trauma like away. I want to break the cycles. So me being in this space, I picked and choose the opportunities. I was very um particular about the rooms I'm in, the things that I said. And now I'm stepping out because I feel like I've healed and I'm continue to heal, but I'm also learning to vocalize my story and be my authentic self because that's what I was afraid of before. I was afraid that advocating for teens and showing up as a Black woman just it wouldn't get the message that I'm trying to portray. But
Mhm.
now I'm learning to accept myself and be comfortable and confident. And so, at this point, like you said earlier, I know I'm the ish and I I know that, it's my story, my experience. And so my message is my message and I have my experience and I feel like no one could tell me really any difference. So,
I feel that. I feel that. Yeah. It's such it's such invaluable when you take time and you find a sense of center in itself. Um, I think for me, I shared this in the last episode I did plug, episode 13 of season three. Um, no, episode 14. Correct me wrong, because I said the wrong number that whole episode. It was episode 14 of season three. but when I aged out, there were some things that being an independent living, being a leader, positive peer, um, a pilot program kid, that the system had placed on me to think that I didn't have no issues.
Mhm.
So like I didn't actively seek out help. But I realized being in that space, being in my own place, um, I was very institutionalized and I had to deal with the institutionalization to be able to deal with the childhood trauma.
Mhm.
Because I could like it was like the institutionalization that built another layer that there was no way to even get to the deeper stuff now at this
Yeah.
point besides going through that. And I had to sit down, do trial and error. Because being honest, there was a time as an adult where I didn't have health insurance, had to figure that out, or didn't know how to find a therapist, had to figure that out. Um, didn't know how to navigate relationships and balance going to school and balance trying to work, yet prioritizing my health, my mental health, you
Mhm.
know. So a lot of things wasn't really a priority as a young adult at that time, you know. So I could think from 18 to like 22, 20, 21 was my whole kind of like my individual evolution and revolution within myself to switching that switch from survival mode to
Mhm.
being in a space of thriving. And I think it's probably not funny to others, but it's funny to me. that like yourself, myself, there's so many individuals who similar circumstances, but surviving for them put them in risky situations. And for surviving for others like yourself, myself, and many others out there, it looked like them burying themselves in work and not dealing. There's so many different,
Yeah.
and I find that a little bit amusing because it's like trauma is wild, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just like you can't really call it. You don't know what someone's survival mode looks like, how they function throughout it. Some people turn to drugs, alcohol, money, sex. Some people turn to, I'm gonna get as many degrees as I can. I'm gonna
Mhm.
get in every single relationship that I can. Like
Mhm.
in all these different things. And um, there's some people that don't switch that switch over, that may be listening, that still out there surviving, and they think they thriving. You know, and I'm not. I'm not trying to knock nobody block, but I challenge those individuals who've dealt with some stuff, who've been through some things, whether it wasn't even the foster care system, because we all, in essence, have some bit of trauma. Going through COVID, trauma. Going through
Yeah.
look, I'm hit some people deep. Going through the recession, trauma. If you grew up impoverished, poor, there's a level of trauma to that. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that being poor is something wrong or what have you, but unfortunately, sometimes you know when you find yourself in stability after being impoverished for so long, it's hard.
Mhm.
It's hard, you know. So I challenge those out there to really kind of sit with self for a minute. Ask yourself some intentional questions. Find out what works for you in the aspect of your self care. Your mental health journey. Everybody's not gonna go see a therapist. Find out what works for you. Whether that means speaking with your pastor, your rabbi, um, I'm trying to figure out other names for spiritual leaders, but I'm just gonna say spiritual leaders. Your best friend, your cat, your dog, because I know people out here petting it up. You know,
Not best
let me
friends though, not best
listen.
friends, because they say birds of feather flock together,
True,
some
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like I use that loosely. Like if you got a best friend that ain't gonna tell you what's what, no. But also you should always try to find someone that can provide you some professional insight into what you may be going through. And that may
Yes.
not be, a family member. That may not be a best friend, and you should seek out some kind of support or counseling or resource. Please don't seek out Google, because Google's going to tell you everything under the sun, and you still might not get it right. So don't be out here trying to self-diagnose, because next thing you know, I got
Yeah.
this, and all right,
Don't have any of it.
man. But I just say that's another PSA out there for y'all. As we get ready to close, though, and end up this episode, thank you so much for being in the space with me. Any last comments or something that you would like to leave with us today?
First off, I want to say thank you for having me. It's been a journey for us to get to this point. Um, but no, you guys are always welcome to follow me on social media. My TikTok and Instagram name is Blue Resilience. Um, I am talking about permanency. I'm talking about teens in foster care, and it's always a fun, ongoing conversation. I keep you up to date with, what I'm doing in the community, and you'll get to know when I'm releasing my trainings. Next year, I'll be releasing a few trainings, of course, on permanency and mentorship for teens. So you can stay up to date, stay connected. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message. And it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you for being in the space and having this dialogue with me. Hopefully, someone out there you're able to take something away from this. Um, I said it before, and I think I'm gonna keep saying this because I think it's needed. I'm not here. I don't think any of my guests are here either to provide lip service. I'm not here to waste nobody waste nobody time. I truly hope that the stories, the experience between myself and whoever's on here, can truly help and impact someone out there. Um, so thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for your continued support in that. Um, I want to as I get ready to end, share that cold and flu season is coming up. We talked about COVID. They say almost every year now after COVID that there's a new variant, new version. So please take care of yourself. But taking care of you helps take care of others. I say this all the time. Yes, get you a little hand sanitizer bottle, but please go wash your hands. Like don't be over here. Yeah, I sanitize about 4 5 times. Look, the sanitizer, most sanitizers say we kill 99.9% of germs. So there's still a percentage still left on there. You know. So just go wash your hands, go spend some time with self. Go look at yourself in the mirror, give yourself a compliment or affirmation, and finish up what you got to do. Um, Outside of that, we may have said some things that could be potentially triggering. So if there has been something that has been triggering to you, please take some time, whether you're listening to this on your car ride or wherever you're going, to get back centered. Take some time to do some mindfulness exercise with self. If something erupted something within you and your story, and you're at a point where you want to find support and resources to figure out how to do that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm not in probably your state, but I'll be more than willing to help you find some resources within your area to help you connect that and start that journey from surviving to thriving. So with that being said, as I mentioned before, we out here where the goal is 50 episodes this season. We This will be episode 15 of season 3. So we got a road to go. We got a road to go to hit that 50 mark. But I believe that it can happen. I've mentioned before that I'm at a place now where I'm transitioning with this work and with everything going on. So not only just for me, but for some of the guests I've had on here. Some of them have their own organizations and what have you. Holiday season coming up. I challenge you guys out there that are my listeners. Go support some of these smaller businesses of lived experience individuals. If you want to donate to my podcast, I probably accept it. It is much needed. It is much needed. Um, if it's not me, that is okay too. I trust that God will provide um, and make it so that I can continue to do this work in some way, shape, or form. But take some time. There's been a lot of people between these 102 episodes that I've had. Like there's a lot of people that have businesses that have lived experience that are trying to do some great work, but are struggling because they can't get grants or get financial support to make the meaningful, impactful change that they would like to. Child welfare is a 90. No, it's actually when I last time I looked at it, it was $24.7 billion industry. If that number is higher or lower, please don't charge me to it. But I know it is $1 billion industry. I believe, I'm gonna just say this, you know, we can deserve one holiday season of donations, and we can give that to the smaller businesses to be able to make the community based support and help, a little bit more effective. We can take half. I ain't gonna say skip. Take half of what you usually give to some of these big organizations and corporations and give it to those smaller businesses. A lot of them are in the communities. A lot of them have some true impactful change with some of these youth because they have lived experience. They know how to communicate with the birth parents, with the youth, and different things like that. So that's my little spiel. Um, After I finish this season, I'm planning to try to start with this book, y'all. Now, some of y'all already know, like, I am not the best at typing at all. So bear with me. That's the goal, to be able to do that. I'm hoping that um I can be able to touch a broader audience by sharing my story and people having something tangible to hold in their hand and be able to get some tips, get some advice, um, understand me a little bit more intimately, um, and more so. I plan to separate it, break it up. It's not going to be one book. How I would like to do it is kind of like an autobiography, but I'm splitting it from my now to my then, breaking up the different sectors of the child welfare systems that I've been in. And one of the reasons I want to do smaller and break it up is throughout my work, I've worked with a lot of individuals within the system that um, they have literacy issues and disabilities with that. So like I don't want a book that's going to intimidate a huge part of this population from wanting to read it or what have you. So I want to be able to provide something that everyone has a fair chance of being able to get the information. With that being said, this has been season 3, episode 15, Resilient Voices and Beyond. I hope you guys have a good morning, good night, good whenever you're listening to this. Talk to you guys soon.